Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. We are going to be looking back at Week 5 of the NFL season, which ended with people getting trips to the IR like they were an Oprah Winfrey guest getting a free car. It has not been pleasant. And you know what else was not pleasant? Week 5 for Chubb's broken wheel. My team, Dennis, I got 50 points from DJ Moore on Thursday night, and I thought all was going to be right in the world. And I had to play far too many Patriots and Cowboys for my team to ever recover after that. I'd like to thank Mac Jones for the minus 4.6 points he put up for me I have Herbert and Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. They were all on a bye. Jahmyr Gibbs unable to play. Javonte Williams, a late scratch. I tell you, Dennis, the late game inactives, I always forget to go back and check because you're watching games and then it kicks off and they were like, Javonte Williams, an inactive. And I was like, right.
I missed Javonte in one league too. I'll tell you, I was watching Monday Night Football last night with a keen interest. So Cole, Team Smog the Dog, was going up against our fellow host, Sports Fanatic MB. And Sunday night, Cole's like, I think if Purdy plays okay, I think I might have a chance. So Purdy goes out and puts up 4 touchdowns. Cole wakes up Monday morning, and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, you got Purdy. And so Cole had it's escaping me, Josh Jacobs and Jimmy Garoppolo going, and Matt had Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones going. So
Aaron Jones clipped me in a couple leagues too.
Jones with a keen interest because I had Aaron Jones in another league, and I was waiting to see what was I going to be able to do. Well, we got the news Jones was going to be out, and it felt like it was like 10 hours before they finally declared him out. Well, Matt didn't have anybody. Our waivers there's no first come first serve. It's always next day. So I knew Matt he didn't have anybody to replace Jones. So then it became Devontae Adams in an 18-point lead versus Cole, who had Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh Jacobs. And I'm like, all right, Cole, here's your shot. You better hope Jair Alexander's playing because they put Alexander on Adams and Jimmy goes to Myers. You may have a shot. And it was close. We're watching the game. Every time Jimmy would throw the ball to somebody not named Devontae, Cole would look at me and go, you know what that means? And I was like, what? He goes, that's good for me. So Josh got the touchdown. In the end, Cole pulled out his first victory of the season, 177 to 171. He was the second highest scorer. So he had for a team that drafted Kadarius Toney in the 5th round, he's, pulling it together. And I know he's 1-4. But it was great to watch him get the victory. He fell asleep watching the game. He woke up this morning, and I'm like, hey, congrats on that win.
Yeah, I don't feel as bad. I lost to John Hamlers, who's 5-0 and sitting atop the league. Hopefully, bye weeks are always a fun challenge.
Yeah, it was, Jackie and Beth made a trade because Beth had, she drafted 71 Cleveland Browns. So, most of her team was on bye this week. So Jackie, made a trade with her. So she had players, they got to learn about collusion and what that was and what that meant. When I got wind that the plan was for Jackie to then trade those players back, I'm like, you can't do that. So that's collusion. You'll get kicked out. She's like, what do you mean? I was just being nice. I'm like, yeah, you can't. That's cheating. That's what that is. So they're both, and I get it. They're both new. They don't play. They're just trying to have fun. So, but they got to learn an interesting lesson about what collusion is and why you don't do it and all that fun stuff. And now my wife is stuck with Kareem Hunt.
Well, they may need him this week. Apparently, Deshaun Watson, no lock to play. Might get the PJ Walker experience, but we will end up getting to that when we do our previews on Friday. First, we'll look back today at the week that was and end with our Thursday night picks. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's the Broncos at the Chiefs. The Broncos haven't beaten the Chiefs in 5 years. They're not going to beat them on Thursday night either. So go ahead and lay your money on one-legged Travis Kelce. Taylor Swift will will him into the end zone 75 times the way this Broncos team plays defense.
Travis ain't going to play this week.
The London game, our second of 3 London games, featured the Jaguars, who stayed in London, getting the 25-20 victory over the Buffalo Bills. Dennis, are the Jaguars, they were 1-2, and we had some questions when they went to London. They got 2 pretty good quality wins, and now they get to face a Colts team that won't have Anthony Richardson. So are the Jaguars back to being kind of the team to beat in the AFC South?
Yeah, I think, they're the most talented team. It's anyone's division, but I feel like they have the most talent in the division. Travis Etienne had a fantastic game. As of through 5 weeks, Christian Kirk is, where'd he go? Wide receiver 20. Calvin Ridley's wide receiver 23. Evan Ingram's having a good season. So they have weapons, and their defense is coming along fine. I think they'll win the division. They have some fantasy assets. I think by and large, Ridley's been a little bit up and down, but the most disappointing fantasy asset has been Trevor Lawrence. Now, I think he'll come around, but it's gonna, I'm starting Tua over him in one league, and he's definitely somebody that's probably in the streamer conversation in one team or one QB leagues.
For the Bills, they had that huge emotional win over the Dolphins, and they kind of, I guess, they didn't go into London until Friday afternoon. They looked a little bit out of sorts. Do you think it was the travel that took a bite out of them, or something to worry about?
You've traveled, internationally, long distances, and those first few days can be a little bit discombobulating. So maybe that was something. I don't know. They're definitely, they've got some players who are playing well. Gabe Davis has scored in 4 straight weeks. Stephon Diggs is wide receiver 2. James Cook is, he's RB16, but it certainly doesn't feel like it. It feels like he's lower than that. And, and Josh Allen's sitting in QB1. So really the weight of the team's success is resting on Allen's shoulders.
Next up, the Houston Texans went to Atlanta and got clipped 21-19, a game that kind of came down to the wire. Dennis, CJ Stroud has been looking good. They've been getting the passing game going, but we've remarked before the running game just isn't quite there. Sunday, 20 carries, only 66 yards for Dameon Pierce. Is the lack of a running game starting to affect the ceiling for this Texans team?
Well, I think what the lack of running game has affected most is the balance of the team. Stroud has been playing great. He set a rookie record for starting a season with 177 straight passes without an interception, or 107 pass attempts, not completions, without an interception. But the Texans did get both of their starting tackles back this week, and I think getting another week under their belt will help get that team back on track. The O-line will gel a little more, and I think that's only going to benefit Dameon Pierce.
For Atlanta, Desmond Ridder has been a little bit embattled. There was even talk that with a bad game on Sunday, he might have permanently lost his starting job. He responded pretty well, 4 carries for 10 yards, got a rushing touchdown, also 28 of 37, 329 yards, a touchdown, had no interceptions, no fumbles. Remember that both Kyle Pitts and Drake London played for his team. Are you feeling a little bit better about Ridder after week 5?
I still have some concerns. His completion percentage is pretty good, but the underlying metrics are not great. His accuracy isn't great. His turnover-worthy throws are fairly high. His ADOT is low, so he's not. What he's doing is he's connecting on a bunch of short passes and then a couple long ones that make things look a little better than they are. He's got to get more consistent on the deep ball, especially when you've got guys like Van Jefferson and Mac Hollins on your team. So, you see they traded for Van today.
Yeah, I don't see that making much of a difference. I'm gonna be honest.
No, they got to get the ball down the field a little more.
If he couldn't beat out Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua for any meaningful targets when Cooper Kupp was out,
you don't think he can beat out Scotty Miller?
I'm not sure he could beat out you right now, but we shall see.
But back to Ridder. So there are some things that he's getting lucky right now. If he doesn't start to, reduce those turnover-worthy throws and those catchably accurate throws, get that number higher, it's going to start to turn into interceptions. I think he needs to use his legs more. Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, and Zach Wilson all have more rushing yards than Desmond Ridder, who ran a 4.5 or a 4.45 40 at the combine. Ridder's clearly the much better athlete, and you got these 3 stiffs that have more rushing yards on the season than him.
Well, we head to Detroit. The Carolina Panthers came in to face a Lions team. It was no Amon-Ra St. Brown, no Jahmyr Gibbs, no problem, as the Lions recorded a 42-24 victory. And honestly, it wasn't even that close, as Carolina put up 14 sort of garbage points at the end. Dennis, the Panthers are 0-5, and they don't look very good. What do you make of this team?
I think they picked the wrong quarterback. That's kind of what it looks like. And then they doubled down by then picking the wrong quarterback that was on their team. They should be starting Andy Dalton. If they want to win, Dalton is the guy. I don't know that Bryce Young won't be the answer long-term, but he's not the answer this year. He needs time. They need to look at, the players who have sat and go back to that philosophy. Put the rookie on the bench. Let him learn some. Yeah, Dalton isn't a superstar. I get that. But he's a seasoned professional football player. And we saw it in the one game that he did play. The team looked completely different. So I think that I struggle with it. I watch them play and I'm just like, man, he doesn't look any more comfortable than Zach Wilson did. So, then on top of it, Miles Sanders has been a huge disappointment. He's RB 28 on the year. Chuba Hubbard is RB 39 so far. I'm starting to wonder if we're a game or two away from Hubbard being the 1A of that duo.
It's certainly possible. I was looking at it. Miles Sanders has 190 rushing yards in 5 games, and Chuba Hubbard has 154 on 35 fewer carries.
Right.
So not looking good for Miles Sanders. For Detroit, if we were looking for a running back that is doing well, that would be David Montgomery. Had a couple of receptions, had another 100-yard game, 109 yards, another touchdown to give him 6 on the season. Is he creeping up into RB1 territory for you?
I think he's in RB1 territory. I mean, until he gets knocked out, RB10 on the season, RB7 in points per game. He's second in the league in touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, 73% of the carries inside the 5-yard line for the Lions. He has the 8th lowest stuffed run rate. Now, if you think about it, that kind of makes sense. We know he's not the fastest guy, but what Montgomery does do well is he has really good vision and really good lateral movement. So that would seem to fit really well. He's first in missed forced tackles, 9th in yards after contact. And most of all, he's versatile. He can catch the ball. They've run with him almost 50-50 split in man concept and zone concept. And he's in the mid 50% success rate on both of them. It doesn't matter what concept they run. He seems to make it work.
Next up on the docket, the Tennessee Titans went to Indianapolis to face the Colts, and the Colts got the 23-16 victory. Dennis Ty.J. Spears, 7 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown, caught 4 passes for 35 yards, only 6 fewer carries than Derrick Henry, had 1 more reception and 2 more targets. Is it time to start taking him more seriously as at least a flex option?
So Spears is in my opinion, he's a low ceiling, low floor flex option because in any given game, they could still choose to grind out Derrick Henry. If they've got a lead, Henry's still going to be their guy. Now, Spears could be game scripted into more activity. He's a good pass catching back. He does have explosiveness. So I do think he'll earn some carries, but I don't know if he's going to get enough volume if he doesn't break a run. He's got a 41% route participation rate, which is good. And he's 13.2% target share. So when he is in there, they do have him running routes and they do throw the ball to him. That leads the Tennessee running backs in both of those categories. So he is their passing down back. I like him. He's a low end flex option with some upside though.
Dennis, for the Colts, Anthony Richardson injured again, has an AC joint injury, likely to be out for a couple of weeks. But the big focus going into the game was the return of Jonathan Taylor, and the big focus coming out of the game was the incredible performance of Zach Moss, who had 23 carries for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, caught a couple of passes. Taylor just 6 carries for 18 yards and caught a single pass. We know Minshew's going to be in there at least for week 6, probably for a few weeks going forward. How do you feel like that backfield split? Do you think they can just go all over to Jonathan Taylor? Do you think Moss has earned more touches?
So before I jump into that, have I told you about how in 2 different instances, I had the 101 in Superflex leagues and purposely traded back to the 102 to draft Anthony Richardson because I just couldn't fathom not taking Bijan Robinson. And all Richardson has done is just keep getting injured. Doesn't feel like a great move so far.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the concerns coming in. It's going to be a concern.
So anyways, back to your question. Where did it go? So to me, I think the re-signing of Jonathan Taylor kind of puts Zach Moss on the trade block. If I'm who's their right, it's not Ryan Pace. Who's their GM? Chris Ballard.
Yeah, Chris Ballard.
I'm Chris Ballard. I'm sending out feelers to running back needy teams, and I'm trying to move Zach Moss for a 3rd or 4th round pick, even a 5th round pick maybe. Especially if I go one more week just to make sure Taylor's healthy. Because I get it, Moss is playing well, but I just don't think he's as good as Jonathan Taylor in any way, shape, or fashion. So for me, I'm going to try to parlay that into some additional draft capital to one of these teams. James Conner just got injured. Maybe Zach Moss gets shipped off to Arizona. The Patriots running game is going nowhere. Maybe they ship him off to New England. Any sort. There's numerous places that he could go. I love what Moss is doing, but I just think that at some point you've got to give that volume to Jonathan Taylor. You just paid him $42 million with $29 million guaranteed over the next 3 years, and it would, what is it, 2021? He was the RB1, so I get it. He's coming off an injury, but you still thought enough of him to send him a bag of cash. So it's going to be in your best interest to give him the ball. I think Minshew may actually help the running game because he's not going to run. And he does some things really well. This is an opportunity for me to maybe let Minshew operate for a week or two. And then if I've got Josh Downs, I might be trying to ship him off for some draft capital because Minshew likes to target Josh Downs. I think Pittman's going to be fine. But I'm really looking forward to seeing Taylor get his 20 carries next week and see what he can do with it, because that offensive line seems to be playing pretty good. I mean, the Titans' run defense isn't a joke.
I'm not so sure the Colts deal Moss, though, because I think they think that they have a chance to be in the playoffs, and I don't know that with a running back you're going to get that much back, because you're talking about, you mentioned a team like the Cardinals. I would think the Cardinals are trying to collect draft picks and not trade them away. And Moss' contract will end at the end of the year. Yeah. Next up, the New York Giants traveled to the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins got the 31-16 victory. Dennis, the Giants again were without Saquon Barkley. They were a fun team last year. They are now 1-4 on the season. Daniel Jones got banged up with a neck injury, which is never what you want to hear. They said he hasn't been ruled out for week 6, but Giants play Buffalo this week. Their schedule not getting any better. Can they work themselves back in as a contender?
It's not looking good. Not looking good at all. I mean, that offensive line is so bad. I think it was Kurt Warner that said on one of the shows last week, maybe, that the offensive line has been so bad in New York that you can't even grade Daniel Jones's performance. Now, we know Jones has flaws, but I mean, he doesn't have any time to throw to Reed. At least he's getting the ball to Waller now, but he can't get the ball to Slayton or Jalen Hyatt because it takes them too long to get more than 10 yards down the field, and they're the fast guys. He just doesn't have any time.
I'm not sure if he's responsible for getting all those to Waller. I think Tyrod may have shipped quite a few of those.
Barkley can't seem to stay healthy, so I don't know, what's going on there. And honestly, none of the wide receivers have stepped up to become the guy. And it was wide open. Any one of them could have went, Terrell Owens and said, you need to give me the ball. Let me show you. So I don't know. It's a mess for fantasy, but if Andrew Thomas can get back, maybe he can stabilize that offensive line a little bit.
Going over to Miami, when does a 10-carry, 65-yard, and a touchdown day look paltry? Well, it's when you're Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane is running in front of you. He had 11 carries, 151 yards, and a touchdown. Came away, though, with a knee injury that is likely to keep him out for a couple of weeks. They said today he's a candidate for the IR. You know who's coming back off the IR? No. Our friend Jeff Wilson. So, Dennis, do you think this is going to become kind of the Mostert Wilson show again for a little while?
So, look, the meme with
Spider-Man's pointing at each other?
No, the girl from The Office. Yeah, The Office, where they're asking her to tell the difference between the two pictures. Really, it's 4 pictures. It's Salvon Ahmed, Devon Achane, Jeff Wilson, and Raheem Mostert. I mean, Achane has a little more explosiveness. I think mostly based on not being in the NFL for 3 or or 8 years and getting hit on by big dudes. But for the most part, all those guys do the same thing. They're fully interchangeable. If I'm who's that? Chris Brooks, is that the UDFA they've got that played some last week? He's got to look around and feel completely out of place because he's like bigger and stockier and not fast compared to them. But no, I think this week, if they activate Wilson, I think he'll be the backup to Mostert. And most of the offseason, I was under the impression from what I was reading that it was going to be Wilson as the 1 and Mostert as the 2, and Achane getting fit in while he, got his feet wet in the NFL, and Ahmed being the 4th guy. And then Wilson got injured, and then Mostert looked fantastic. And all of a sudden, then Achane makes Mostert looking fantastic look pedestrian. He's been so explosive.
That's what I said. 6.5 yards per carry and a touchdown just look like a ho-hum day next to your teammate.
So, I think if Wilson's activated this week, I think he's startable as a flex.
Next up, one of the more surprising games of the day, the Saints went into New England where the Patriots were favored by 1.5 and came away with the 34-0 victory, second worst loss of Bill Belichick's career. It was also not a good week to be named Jones and be playing quarterback, as we saw for Daniel Jones and as we will see for Mac Jones in a minute. But first, Dennis, maybe owing to the wide point spread, we got to see a little longer look at rookie running back Kendre Miller. Got 12 carries for 37 yards, caught 4 passes for 53. Miller was an intriguing prospect to many coming in to the season. Got injured, got a little bit of a slow start, but what did you think of what you saw?
I think Miller is definitely a stash guy for, if you're in a redraft league and let's say you've got what do you usually have, 6 or 8 bench spots, you might slide him into that last one and wait and see, just to see if he gets a chance. I think when Williams comes back, I think Jamal will take his spot back as the one of the 1-2 punch. Kamara will get back to doing his Alvin Kamara stuff, which is handling about 50% of the carries and 80% of the passes. But I think that Kendre Miller, he's got a future. And in Dynasty, he's ripe for your taxi squad. Hold on to him there. Be patient because he's probably going to have a very prominent role next season.
All I have to say for those of you that played Chris Olave is thank God he got the touchdown because he has not had a couple of great weeks here. For the Patriots, Mac Jones, another lopsided loss. The Patriots have lost been outscored 72-3 the last 2 weeks. Mac Jones, 12 of 22, 110 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Got the hook again for the second straight week. And for the second straight week, Belichick and even Bill O'Brien in his presser yesterday have come out and said he's still the starter. How long do you think that'll be the case?
I think the leash is getting shorter and shorter. I mean, you got to feel for him a little bit because the running game is not producing, and their I think their wide receiving core rivals the Giants' wide receiver core for ineptness right now. Nobody's getting it done. It's a challenging situation to be in. The one thing Daniel Jones has that Mac Jones doesn't is at least Daniel's mobile and can run. I think Mac might be a little better decision maker than Daniel. But if I'm Mac, I'm probably starting to look over my shoulder for that Carson Wentz signing.
Good Lord. Speaking of
Carson Wentz onto a team this year, you just watch.
Speaking of inept passing offenses, the Ravens went into Pittsburgh in prime position to take a commanding lead in the AFC North and left a brown streak on the field as they lost 17-10. Dennis, a lot was made by analysts looking at the game of the subpar performance from some Ravens wide receivers led to Jackson pressing a little bit there at the end and getting a few turnovers. We had commented, in previous weeks, it seemed like it was back to kind of Jackson having to do it all as a runner and a passer. Is the Ravens offense still just relying too much on one single player?
Well, I think the receivers have to convert. They've had a lot of injuries this year at running back, at wide receiver, and at left tackle. Ronnie Stanley, I think, has only played one game. So there is some pressure going on there. OBJ, I don't know what we were expecting. I drafted him on some best ball teams thinking, well, maybe he'll have a 1-year renaissance. And, he's already back on the boat. He's out there. I mean,
at least he's on the boat. Rashad Bateman's drowning in the ocean.
Yeah, Aguilar, he Mr. Stonehands converts 4 or 5 targets. I think Zay Flowers has to do a little better than 5 of 11. But it looks like Zay Flowers is kind of stepping up to be the one there. And Lamar, for all the flack that's being thrown out there, he's got a career high completion percentage of 69.9%. He's on pace for career highs in attempts and yards. But he is also on pace for a career low in touchdown percent. So those receivers need to step it up and convert some of those passes that he's completing into touchdowns.
For the Steelers, they moved to 3-2, and actually, technically, I think are first place in the division. They head into their bye week. Deontay Johnson has said he is coming back when they come back out, but we have seen George Pickens kind of take off. He had 6 for 130 and the game-winning touchdown. Do you think he's moving into that number 1 role for Pittsburgh?
I think he provides, it's a 1A, 1B kind of thing. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens are different receivers. Now, Pickens is going to produce. He's a big guy. He's fast. He's strong, but he also will make some mistakes. But he gets downfield. He converts. He's an exciting player to watch. Deontay Johnson, much better route runner, has some good downfield ability, is probably quicker, a little better in the short area. So I definitely think there's room enough for both of them. With Johnson out, Pickens leads the team in routes, targets, air yards, ADOT, and at first read throws at 32.1%. So Kenny Pickett is looking for George Pickens.
Yeah, that Pickett to Pickens connection is just designed to really trip up announcers, as they made jokes about that on Sunday. Into the afternoon window games, the Philadelphia Eagles remained perfect, going to 5-0 with a 23-14 win over the Los Angeles Rams. Dennis, we talked about Dallas Goedert not being involved and being an afterthought on Friday, and all that happened was he saw a team-high 9 targets, catching 8 passes for 117 yards and a touchdown. So my question for you is, was he listening?
It certainly seems like it. I mean, he knows what's up. He's listening to the Fantasy Football Roundtable, and he had a phenomenal game. Unfortunately, it came at the expense of Devonta Smith, who, had 1 catch for 6 yards. That's not what you want to see out of Skinny Batman by any stretch of the imagination. And on a day when Jalen Hurts had 38 pass attempts, a lot of people have Devonta Smith as, either their – I guess if you went running back heavy, he could have ended up as your wide receiver 1, if you drafted him in maybe the 3rd round after 2 RBs. Or a lot of people probably have him as their wide receiver 2. And at that draft capital, you can't be getting one reception for 6 yards. I mean, if you do, you got to at least make it a touchdown catch. Just throw us a bone here.
For the Rams, we got to see Cooper Kupp and everyone's darling Puka Nacua together. And you know what? It did not disappoint. 23 combined targets, 15 combined receptions, 189 yards, and a touchdown. Do you like those two together in the Rams offense?
So we've seen the Rams in the past have multiple productive wide receivers. And to think that they wouldn't be able to do that with Kupp and Nacua, I think was folly. I think Nacua and Tutu Atwell will kind of go back and forth with which one will be the most productive. If I had to guess, I'd say It'll be Nakua, probably 65%.
Looks like I might have lost Dennis there a little bit, but you know, I am. It was a nice showing there for both of the Rams receivers, so something to look forward to. On to the next game. The Cincinnati Bengals went to the Arizona Cardinals and got the 34-20 win. And if you were waiting on bated breath to see if the Bengals could get back to looking like the Bengals, this was the game for you. Joe Burrow, 36 of 46, caught for 317 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Dennis correctly projected that Jamar Chase was going to have himself a day, and he certainly did. Saw 19 targets, caught 15 of them for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. Hopefully, the Bengals will be able to keep that going. That was my preseason Super Bowl pick. Burrow was my preseason MVP pick, so no one was happier to see that performance than me. The Cardinals, on the flip side, James Conner, 6 carries for 46 and then left with an injury. He is now going to IR, so he is going to be out for about 4 weeks. In his stead, we saw Amari DiMercato kind of get the carries there. Rondale Moore got a couple. Dobbs ran for a couple of times, but DeMarcado was the running back who got the work. 10 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown. He's been involved a little bit the last couple of weeks. It is waiver wire night, and I would certainly suggest that he should be kind of a top waiver wire target for you if you are looking to make a move and pick somebody up. Dennis is back. How did you feel about Amari DiMercato filling in there for James Conner?
My apologies on the power surge. I don't know what happened. See, Amari DiMercato. Well, the first thing I thought of was, let's look at his college career. So I went back and looked, and he actually was Kendre Miller's backup. And, Miller was banged up during that stretch run. And so DiMercato did get some playing time in the national championship game and leading up to that. So, but he didn't have great stats. He did catch 40 passes in college. He's a solid back, 5'9", 215 pounds, compares athletically to Aaron Jones. So my thought is, if I can get, 80% of Aaron Jones out of an undrafted free agent, I'm all about it. So I'm kind of trying to go track him down and pick him up now, see what I can get out of it. Keontae Ingram, having been injured, is, he's shown himself to kind of be just a guy. So I think DiMercato has a chance to step in and be the lead back while Conner is out. So I like what he brings to the table.
Next up, we had kind of an interesting clash. Kansas City Chiefs went into Minnesota and got the 27-20 victory. Dennis, we talked about on Friday kind of liking Rashee Rice. He got 4 catches, 33 yards, and another touchdown. Are you starting to feel more interested in him as a weekly play?
It's been kind of up and down. 11.6 points, 4 points, 10.9 points, 6.2, and then 13.3 this week. So I want to see more consistency out of him. The opportunity, I think, is going to be there with Travis Kelce out. I know they like Noah Gray, and they're going to try to run some of the same stuff they do with Kelce with Gray. But Noah Gray is not Travis Kelce. So there'll be opportunity for somebody in this Chiefs receiving core to step up. And Rashee Rice has as good a chance as anybody. Justin Ross got some play this week with think somebody got banged up, and that got him onto the field. I still like Sky Moore. I'm not out on Sky Moore yet, but he seems to be squandering his chance to be more than just a guy. You're muted.
I wouldn't be so sure Kelsey's out. He practiced today.
Yeah.
He's officially listed as questionable. I wouldn't be so sure that they'll play without him. The Vikings, Justin Jefferson injured his hamstring and is now on IR. Vikings are 1-4, 0-3 at home, and have kind of the Depression Bowl against the Bears this week. There has been rumblings that they might look at moving Kirk Cousins and sort of kind of launching into something of a rebuild. Do you think that smoke is going to intensify now that Jefferson is out?
Could you imagine if Bill Belichick traded for Kirk Cousins?
I don't think the rest of the Patriots infrastructure is good enough. I actually don't think it's all Mac Jones' issue, but I don't think Mac Jones is great. But it's more like if the Jets traded for Kirk Cousins, they have the infrastructure that they might actually be.
Yeah, but for me, it's like the Jets aren't gonna. It's literally a 1-year rental if the Jets trade for him, and I don't know
unless Aaron Rodgers can't come back.
To me, it looks like they're fading fast. Their defense is still having issues. They lead the league in turnovers, have the 6th fewest rushing yards. That Alexander Madison breakout, I think it is not going to break out. The defense has given up the 9th most points. And they've got a minus 12-point differential through 5 games. So they've got to throw the ball on offense because they don't have a great running game. They just lost Justin Jefferson. And we've seen Kirk make mistakes under pressure. He has a history of that. And losing Justin Jefferson, I think, just cranked up the pressure on Kirk Cousins.
On to a game that left me feeling cold, and that was the New York Jets traveled to the Denver Broncos and got the 31-21 victory. Dennis, one bright spot for me as a fantasy player is they said they were taking the restrictions off Breece Hall, and they meant it. 22 carries, 177 yards, a touchdown, had 3 receptions. Are you feeling good about Breece Hall after this?
Man, his snaps keep going up, and so does his production. This was the first week that he had more than 50% of the snaps. I do think that if they want to, if they're holding out hope that Aaron Rodgers can make it back for the playoffs, which I still, with a torn Achilles, I'm not buying it. But if they are holding out hope, Breece Hall is going to be the one to carry him there, not Zach Wilson. So it's going to be all on the back of the running game. I got Breece as my RB3 in Dynasty behind Bijan Robinson and CMC. He looks good coming back. I know, when you watch him run, I can see a little bit of 2022 J.K. Dobbins in his running. So I think, while he's still fast, I don't think he's back to where he was before the injury, but I think he's getting closer every day.
Meanwhile, the dumpster fire in Denver is now 1-4. Dennis, what do you make of the Broncos offense for fantasy?
So on the plus side of things, they are 8th in scoring. So the offense is putting up some points. However, the defense has given up the most points in the NFL. So I think if we can get Javonte Williams back and healthy and let Jaleel McLaughlin kind of squeeze Samaje Perine out of some touches, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Johnson, and who's the one that Brandon Johnson keeps squeezing out? That Marvin Mims
fucking fumbled twice on Sunday.
If we could get those, the Broncos have some playmakers, and they just got to get. I think they have to. Sean Payton has to go home, take a good hard look in the mirror and say, Sean, you guys have to outscore everybody because our defense sucks.
Rumors here are that they're going to begin a fire sale, which at this point I wouldn't even mind. I'm kind of over this team. I don't know what they're doing, and it's fair to wonder if Bill Belichick has lost a step as a head coach. I have watched all these games. Sean Payton is not what he was 6-7 years ago.
Well, Drew Brees will do that for you.
That's probably part of it. Yeah. Sunday Night Football, I thought it was going to be the best game of the week, and it was a snooze fest, mostly because I'm still waiting for the Cowboys to show up. 49ers got the 42-10 victory. Dennis, a couple of early blowouts that were aided by some defense and special teams covered up the fact the Cowboys offense hasn't consistently produced a lot this season. Is that starting to be a problem for them?
I think so. Dak's decision-making is starting to come under fire, and rightfully so, but they're not able to run the ball consistently. I think Tony Pollard's like RB10 or RB11, but it sure doesn't feel like it. CD Lamb, I don't think, is getting the ball near enough. I'm not even sure that Brandon Cooks is out there. I thought he was going to I thought he was in a great situation to have a real good bounce back year after being lost in Houston, but it's just not happening. Michael Gallup is out playing him. I just, what they miss? They miss Kellen Moore. So I think this is part and parcel. I think what you get when you put Mike McCarthy in charge of your offense.
On the other side, 49ers 5-0, but it's not just the record, it's how they've been winning. Are they the best team in the NFL?
Man, it's sure looking like it. Like they're doing pretty much whatever they want. The defense is dominating. They can cover receivers at all three levels. Their linebackers, they've got the best coverage linebackers in the game and the best run support linebackers in the game. And oddly enough, they're the same guys. Their pass rush is outstanding. Their defensive backs just shut people down. And then the offense, it's literally pick your poison. McCaffrey had 51 yards rushing and 27 yards receiving. And you would think if you heard that, you'd be like, oh my gosh, at least we had a shot. And you didn't. They beat you by 32 points. McCaffrey spent half the game on the bench while Jordan Mason carried the ball for 6.9 yards a pop and a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk.
He did even better than Raheem Mostert.
What's that?
He was even better than Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just that offense is clicking. Brock Purdy is making the right decisions. And they were talking on the broadcast about the thing that they feel that Purdy does really, really well is he makes decisions fast. He's decisive. He's quick. He gets through his reads that way. He knows what's going on. And those are the types of things that you can't teach. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't have the biggest arm. But, not that I'm comparing him to Joe Montana, but neither did Joe Montana. He just made great decisions on a highly consistent basis. And I think that's what Brock Purdy does. Maybe there's something to getting a ton of playing time for 4 years in college.
Yeah, he has looked really good.
In an offense where you've got to think, you're not just looking at the sideline waiting to be told what to do.
Monday Night Football, the Green Bay Packers headed into Las Vegas to battle the Raiders, and the Raiders got the 17-3 victory. Dennis, Packers are 2-3 now. They're the second-place team in the NFC North, but they have not looked great or consistent. Probably the toughest night of the year for Jordan Love, who was 16-30, 182, and 3 interceptions. Are the Packers good enough to make a playoff run?
I struggle with saying yes, because it feels like when you look at the teams that are in that range, it's more it's a war of attrition. Seattle's 3-1, Atlanta's 3-2, New Orleans is 3-2, the Pack is 2-3, Dallas is 3-2. So there's several teams that are going to be kind of just middling in there, and somebody's going to win the tiebreakers. It feels like Green Bay's probably going to be left out, but Minnesota's not going to do it. Maybe Chicago goes on a run and makes a push now that they're letting Justin Fields play, but I don't think they have the overall talent to do that. I think San Francisco and Seattle are probably two teams that'll make it. Tampa, somebody's got to win that division. Detroit's looking good. Then Philadelphia, and it looks like Dallas will probably be one of the top 7 as well. So then it comes down to, is New Orleans going to make a push? Atlanta's at 3-2. Are they going to find some consistency? Somebody's going to stumble into that 7th spot, and I think the Packers have as good a shot as anybody.
The Raiders now 2-3. The Raiders now 2-3. AFC is pretty loaded. How do you feel about them and their contending chances?
So we go through Miami, Buffalo. They feel pretty solid. Somebody's going to come out of the North. That's 3. Jacksonville's 4. Kansas City and the Chargers are 5 and 6. So very much like the Packers, somebody's going to have to stumble into that 7th spot. I think for the Raiders, it's going to depend on whether or not Garoppolo can stay healthy. If he stays healthy the rest of the way, he can get the ball to Adams and Jacoby Myers. And by doing that, that opens up the running game for Josh Jacobs. And that team is a narrow funnel for offense and for fantasy. It's those 3 guys. Occasionally somebody else gets it. I mean, Michael Mayer caught 2 passes yesterday.
I know, and the Monday night announcers called it his coming out party, which is a really sad state of.
And then he disappeared. I don't think Indianapolis or Houston are going to make a push. The Browns, they're 2-2, maybe. I'm starting to feel like only one team's going to come out of the AFC North. The Jets in New England, it might honestly come down to the Jets and the Raiders stumbling into that last spot.
Well, speaking of stumbling, we will wrap up by doing our look at Thursday Night Football. The Denver Broncos 1-4 at the 4-1 Kansas City Chiefs. Dennis, I already mentioned I am taking the Chiefs. Do you feel differently?
No. The Chiefs are really good, I think, at not overlooking opponents. And when they get the sense that maybe they did a little bit, Patrick Mahomes is really good at putting the team on his back and making plays. Now, we'll have to watch and see, does Travis Kelce play? Unfortunately, the Broncos give up the most points in the NFL, and they're going against one of the teams that seems to be able to score at will. Though they haven't historically, not as much this year, but I like Mahomes, and Mahomes they're starting to rely a little more on Isaiah Pacheco when they need to. He runs hard. He's not an overly gifted running back, but with Kelce out, we might see a little more Jerick McKinnon. Could be a good game for Rashee Rice or even Kadarius Toney to step up and make some plays. But I'm going to take the Chiefs, and I think the Broncos it'll be decent for fantasy because they're going to have to try to score points to keep up. And so I'm okay with playing Cortland Sutton, playing Jerry Jeudy, If Javonte starts, I'm good playing him. I think Jaleel McLaughlin, until we find out sort of where he fits in the mix, if everybody's healthy, I'm a little more hesitant to want to play him. He's definitely a guy I think is worth picking up on waivers, but I think you got to kind of watch and get a feel for what's going to happen in that backfield before you just expect to stick him in and get 6 yards a pop.
The last time the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs was in 2015 when Peyton Manning led a fourth quarter comeback to get the 31-24 win, and the Broncos went on to win the Super Bowl. The Chiefs have won 15 consecutive times. The Broncos have probably had that many head coaches since the last time they managed to get a victory over the Chiefs. It's not happening on Thursday night.
I feel for you, Matt.
It's like being a Bears fan playing the Packers. We will be back on Friday with a look at the rest of the Week 6 schedule. Only 2 teams on a bye this week, the Packers and the Steelers. So a few more games. There is yet another London game. The Ravens and the Titans will be foist upon the people from England. So we will look at all that. There are some interesting matchups this week, which we will look forward to breaking down. But until we're back on Friday, Dennis, how can people fill those long, lonely hours?
You should head over to your favorite podcast platform, look for the Fantasy Football Roundtable, and hit that subscribe button. Download, give us that bump. We love that. It makes us feel good about ourselves, and we need all the boost we can get being a Broncos and Lions fan.
I don't know. The Lions are actually good this year. I might just switch over and just root for you.
You can't even root for your second team, the Cowboys, huh?
I don't like the idea that we consider that my second team.
We shouldn't have drafted so many of them.
Well, that'll do it for this week. I'll go look at my fantasy teams led by Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson and wonder what might have been. I hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday night, and we will see you again on Friday.